all of this is happening, we have to talk about Rikers Island as death mounts on Rikers Island. 16 detainees died last year alone, 3 so far this year. So we spoke to Marvin Mayfield, who is now a criminal justice advocate, but decades before bail reform was in place, he spent years of his life on different occasions on Rikers Island awaiting trial. He shares the long-lasting impact.
I came up in a time, in an environment where most young black men were expected to become part of the criminal justice system at some point in time. And I fell into that category, into that trap. I mean, at age 15, it was the first time I had some interactions with the police. Fast forward, I'm 22 years old. I'm just coming home from the military, right? I'm still living in Brooklyn. I got a little apartment in Brooklyn. It's 2 a.m. I'm walking down the street coming from a party, and the police approach me, throw me on the hood of the car, rough me up, beat me up, hit me in the ribs with their sticks. And it wasn't until I got to central booking that I found out that I was being charged with a crime that had occurred in the neighborhood, right? And I was being charged with a burglary. So even though they took me in under suspicion because I was in the place, they held me because of my record, because I've had a prior charge. 3 days in central booking before I got to a judge who imposed a $10,000 bail on me. I didn't have $10 at the time.
So they took you to Rikers?
So they took me to Rikers. And that's when the story really begins. It was hell. 11 months of abuse, 11 months of degrading treatment, 11 months of negligence and apathy and brutality. So at the end of 11 months, on one particular court date, the prosecution comes to me and says, Mr. Mayfield, and I should mention that not at any time had my lawyer or anyone ever said, here's the evidence we have against you, here's the discovery, nothing. After 11 months, they said that if you plead guilty today, you get time served and go home.
So your option was to stay in and fight this case, or you can go home today?
I can go home today, but another guilty plea. Another guilty plea to a felony on my record. The worst and hardest blow of everything was to plead guilty to something I didn't do just to stop that suffering. And and the prosecutors held all the cards, and they told me that if I didn't take this plea today, they're gonna dangle this mandatory minimum over my head of 5 years. So instead of rolling the dice, right? Instead of taking my chances, I pled guilty and I went home that day. But I went home as a 2-time felon.
Tell me what you're feeling right now.
I feel set up, set up by a system that didn't have to incarcerate me at that time. They didn't have to do that,
Before you went in, you had started a job, you had secured in a place, had a car.
Right.
What happened to all of that?
All of those things, my job, my car, and my place, were all gone after 11 months. I couldn't hold on to it.
For 2 decades, Marvin Mayfield became part of the revolving door of the legal system and was incarcerated pre-trial multiple times, including on drug charges, before he says he took another plea deal and served time in prison. This was before the bail laws were changed. Now Mayfield is a community organizer and advocate for criminal justice reform.
I have to raise my hand. I haven't always been the upstanding citizen that you see sitting here today. I raised my hand to some things that I've done in my life, but these were things that happened in my neighborhood, in my community.
You never went to trial. You were held every time because you couldn't pay bail.
Right.
What did that experience do to you?
It made me feel helpless. It made me feel trapped.
Do you think the legal system would have expected you to turn out the way you have?
The legal system would never have expected me to turn out the way I have. You know why? I didn't even expect me to turn out the way I have.
If there's one thing in this whole bail reform conversation that you want to make sure you convey to people, what would that be?
That bail reform is working. And it has been able to save lives, transform lives, and I guess bring fairness to a system that had been completely against people of color.